This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Colorado chapter of the Nature Conservancy and TNC chapters throughout the western United States. Guided by science and grounded by decades of collaborative partnerships, the Nature Conservancy has a long-standing legacy of achieving lasting results to create a world where nature and people thrive. During the last week of every month throughout 2025, Mountain Prairie will be delving into conversations with a wide range of the Nature Conservancy's leaders, partners, collaborators, and stakeholders, highlighting the myriad of conservation challenges, opportunities, and solutions here in the American West and beyond. To learn more about the Nature Conservancy's impactful work in the West and around the world, visit www.nature.org. This is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast. I'm Ed Robertson. My guests today are Helen Carlson and Dylan DesRosier. Both Helen and Dylan are leaders, community builders, and proud members of the Blackfeet Nation. Helen is the chair of the Piikani Studies Division at Blackfeet Community College, and she's dedicated over 2 decades to education, cultural preservation, and building pathways for future generations. Dylan, who's the Blackfeet Program Manager with the Nature Conservancy, brings a wealth of experience in conservation work rooted in respect for Indigenous knowledge and long-term community collaboration. In addition to their official roles, they both wear many hats when it comes to serving their communities, mentoring youth, engaging in policy discussions, telling stories, and working on grassroots initiatives that strengthen cultural and environmental resilience. In this episode, we explore the profound relationships between land, language, and stewardship. Helen shares the moving story behind her Blackfeet name. Dylan reflects on his time working in Glacier National Park and how it shaped his conservation approach. And we dig into the groundbreaking Chief Mountain Initiative, an effort that weaves together conservation, education, and cultural revitalization. We also discuss the evolving role of conservation organizations, TNC's comprehensive approach to supporting Blackfeet initiatives, the importance of holistic thinking, and why Indigenous leadership is crucial for the future of land stewardship. As usual, we wrap up the conversation with some incredible book recommendations that will deepen your understanding of these topics long after the episode ends. This conversation is rich with wisdom, humor, and insight, and Helen and Dylan make quite a team, bringing their unique expertise and shared passion for their community to this important discussion. I'm excited for you to hear it, so here's my conversation with Helen Carlson and Dylan DesRosier. All right, Helen and Dylan, I was just saying before we started recording, the challenge here is going to be keeping this thing within an hour because you guys are doing so much. And when I look at everything you're doing in your community and on the landscapes across so many different kind of disciplines, everything from education to conservation and all the overlaps there, it's amazing how much important work you're doing. But before we get started, I was wondering if we could just start with some introductions. And Helen, maybe we could start with you, but I'd love to hear just kind of a brief overview of where you grew up, what you do now. And if you don't mind, I'd love to hear from both of you your Blackfeet names and how those names came to be. Helen, would you mind starting?
Okay. Idamix kanato ni stuanagok mamiat sikamiaki. Good morning. My name is Helen Augare Carlson. My Blackfoot name is Mamiat Sikamiaki. It means magpie woman. I grew up here on the lands of the Blackfeet Nation. Pretty much lived here my whole life. I went to college at MSU Bozeman and then graduated from University of Montana in business administration with an emphasis in management and another emphasis in information systems. Mm-hmm. I've been working here at Blackfeet Community College since September of 2000. Started out my career in systemic reform and STEM education. Had a great probably 8 to 10 years of working with teachers. I did a lot with professional development activities
Yep.
in schools. And then we launched the Native Science Field Center, co-founded that model in 2004. And that's when I stepped into informal science education, and just doing a lot of field programming, youth programming. We are kind of the arm to the K-12 system here on our campus. I eventually moved into administration, been doing a lot with institutional development, wear a lot of hats with that. And then just recently, I was put in as interim Piikani Studies chair, and I've been chairing that division for about a year and a half. And right now, I'm working on building 4-year degrees under our Piikani Studies. My Blackfoot name, how did I get my Blackfoot name? So I have 3 names, which is kind of common, I guess. My husband, he's like, I just learned one and then I have to learn another one. My baby name is Goomski. It was given to me by one of my great-grandmothers when I was brought home from the hospital. Means moon face. Gokomiki Sum is our mother. Napi, Natusi, the sun and the moon are significant in our creation. So to hold that name, I guess, growing up, I was just proud to have a Blackfoot name as a child. And you know how kids tease. So I stopped using that name because I didn't understand the story behind it. And so I get teased a lot. So I didn't use it for a long time. Now I know the significance and how powerful it is.
Sure.
When I returned home from Missoula, I put on a ceremony for my girls to get their Blackfoot names because they were going to go to immersion school. And at that time, my father-in-law, he asked the elder for a Blackfoot name, if I could get a Blackfoot name. So, Anat Spumita Biaki, Pretty Sky Woman, was my second name.
Yeah.
And I held that name for a lot of years, until I went into help with the Ukan, and Leopard was our elder. In that center lodge, he liked to tease, and he gave all the ladies who were helping, he gave them nicknames. So when we were done with celebration day, I went to see him before he traveled back to Canada, and he told me, he said, Gistu, he said, you don't be ashamed to see me when you come up north. You come up and you visit me. You visit our camp, or, don't be shy. And I said, well, how are you going to remember me? You gave them all nicknames to remember them by. I said, and he said, because I was waiting for you. He said, I'm going to give you a name. And that's when he blessed me with the name Mamiat Tsikamiaki. And he told me, he said, this is a real powerful name. He said, people are going to ask you where you got this name, and you tell them that I gave it to you. He said, and when you come up north, he said, you come and see me, and he said, me and my wife will tell you the story that goes with this name. And it wasn't but maybe a year later he passed, and so unfortunately I didn't get to sit with him and his wife to get the full story. But I know years later, when I started to use the name in ceremony, another elder, Apamaka, was painting my face. And he Tanitaniko, I said, Mamiat Tsikamiaki. And he's like, what? And I said it, a magpie woman. And he said, he said, he prayed. And he said, wait now. He said, before you walk away, he said, and he called out to everyone in the lodge. He said, this lady here, her name is Mamiat Tsikamiaki. He said, the story that goes with this name is the magpie. The magpie is the one who brought the buffalo back.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, I carry that name with humbleness, and I always remind myself of, the blessings and the appreciation I have for our ways and just the good life that I live.
What a cool story, and what a cool just kind of operating system of gratitude. I need to adopt more of that. One question before we get to Dylan. When I hear that you interchange Blackfoot and Blackfeet, or maybe not interchange, but could you specify, just so that I'm not saying anything incorrectly, how should I refer? When do I use Blackfoot? When do I use Blackfeet?
To even make it more complicated, it's Piikani.
Well, I looked that up and I figured out how to pronounce it.
Okay, so the non-natives, we are known for ourselves in our confederacy. Siksikaitsitapi is the Blackfoot Confederacy, made up of Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika. And of course, the medicine line or the Canadian border separated the band of Piikani. So we call ourselves Amskapi Piikani and Abatso Piikani. But for government terms, the U.S. calls us, and we've adopted the Blackfeet Nation in English. So it's an English translation of who we are, but in our way, in our language, we are Piikani.
I've got that spelled out. It's funny because I've got this Southern accent from Eastern North Carolina, and it's hard enough for me just to talk in general. And then if I try to start pronouncing all this, it could become a mess. But I really appreciate you clarifying that.
Yeah, and it makes it to be is Blackfoot. So
okay.
We're pluraling it's Blackfoot.
Got it.
So basically, if you're referencing sort of us south of the border, typically people use Blackfeet, and then north of the border, or if you're talking about the whole, we might rather prefer the Blackfoot.
Got it. Okay, Dylan, you got a lot going on as well. Tell us your brief bio, if you don't mind.
Well, Oki Nixokoax, good to be here with all of you relatives. Nistu nitanaku kyai kakatusi. Namochto to omochkoyes amskapi pikani xakum. So my Blackfeet name roughly translates to bear star. And I received that name, over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I was working in Glacier Park on trails, actually, and I spent a few years working in the Mena Glacier Valley, and I just had a lot of good fortune and spent a lot of time interacting with grizzlies in Mena Glacier. I saw a lot. I avoided several, and it was a fun summer. And after that summer, my cousin Misinski gave me that name in part of a lot of those relationships and recognition. And so since then, I've been moving through the world with that name. I grew up in the small town of East Glacier, and spent a number of years away living in Missoula, attending University of Montana, both undergrad and grad school. Spent a lot of time thinking about sort of natural resource issues at the intersection of, federal lands, tribal sovereignty. Spent a lot of years thinking about and writing on tribal water rights, settlements, and in-stream flows, and then pivoted and became much more land focused in my role with the Nature Conservancy. I started working for the Nature Conservancy in the summer of 2015, so almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And since then have been working in service to my community and following the lead of a lot of really incredible people and elders, including Helen here. So just feel like I definitely won the lottery and get to do incredible work in a place I'm really passionate about and working with a lot of amazing people. So that's pulled me in a lot of exciting, fun directions, and a lot of this work I think that we're doing collectively is, of course, generational work on a long-term horizon. So very different than the sort of immediate gratification of trails work.
Yeah.
I miss certain parts of that, but also just really enjoy it, and thankful to be here.
Well, and one thing that I want to add to your bio is that you're a really, really, really talented and skilled photographer, and did some amazing landscape photography and just natural photography up in that area. And I'll link to your photography website in the episode notes. I want to obviously get into some details about TNC's work, but I was wondering if we could talk briefly from a high level, kind of this intersection between education, culture, just kind of the general health of a community, and then the land conservation world. Helen, I know that, when you were just giving your bio, much of your career has been devoted to different forms of education. And so I'm curious, Helen, if you could just talk a bit about how you think about all these things being interconnected, the health of a community, both from an educational standpoint, but then also from a land management ecological standpoint, if that makes sense.
Blackfeet Community College, they've always really pushed, our vision was to include the Blackfeet knowledge, culture, and language. And it's in our mission statements. It's throughout our core themes. And everything, pretty much all the divisions, we all revolve around Piikani knowledge and language, and do our best to, ensure that the courses we offer are infused with that knowledge from the community. I think for me, again, just like Dylan said, really blessed that, I was able to work with youth and have the opportunity to build a pathway that leads from I guess the passion of learning the language and then tying the language back to the land, because you really can't have one without the other. Like in our way of life, we don't separate the sky from the earth. And so the language encompasses that world as we know it through our Blackfoot lens. Mm-hmm. And so, it's just a natural process for us when we think of Western education, and we kind of block it into different divisions. In our Blackfoot worldview, we have what's called BOMOCs, and the transfer of knowledge. And so when you're learning and you ask for that knowledge and an elder transfers you, it then becomes your responsibility to teach it back, to learn it and to teach it back. And so just from like understanding these natural processes and how we understand the world around us, and especially, building relationships.
Yes.
I think it allows us the freedom to not just integrate knowledge, but to actually uphold the knowledge as equal and parallel to Western knowledge. And so when we think about conservation or stewardship or, all these Western terms, that's just our way of life. That's just how we understand our relationships with our universe. Like I said, Napi Natusi, Kokomiki Sum, Bitawatsis, those sky beings, Pumitapik, Sakumitapik, those earth beings, Soitapik, the water beings, and how we learn and watch from the birds, the animals, what they teach us and how they guide us and the gifts that they share with us. That's the knowledge that really ties together when you understand the stories and the songs and the ceremonies that, come with our way of life. Then it helps you to really be innovative in designing programs and community, like the INI initiative, community grassroots movements, where you're collectively taking action together and working towards a common goal.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Dylan, getting more into how TNC is plugged in and, helped to kind of serve this community. Could you give me a kind of a go back in time 10 years when you were considering, I'm guessing, a lot of different options in the conservation world? What attracted you to this opportunity to come in with TNC into a community that you knew so well and, plug in and kind of serve this community using the resources of TNC? I mean, can you just kind of, if you can remember those days, kind of what was the vision and the idea when you started?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think for me personally, I'd heard about the position from multiple places. I wasn't super familiar with the Nature Conservancy's work, but I did know, from my experience in education previously that, there's countless examples of the result or outcome of conservation being undermining Indigenous relationships, fueling disconnection, dispossession, removal, or at least misunderstanding of Indigenous rights, use, access, etc. And that's sort of the tip of the iceberg. So I think I came into it certainly with a certain chip on my shoulder and an understanding that if not done respectfully, ethically, there's definitely the propensity or potential for there to be harm. And that's something that I was really conscious of and careful of and in some ways motivated by an interest in making sure that this potential partnership between, a conservation NGO and the nation or my community, I was motivated by this understanding that I wanted, the product of our work to not cause any harm, but also motivated to do this work right, do this work ethically, and support and empower my community to do the things that they want to do on the landscape across the territory. So I took that both as a sort of pretty serious responsibility and also a pretty exciting opportunity. But I think going back, I want to build on something that Helen mentioned, which is just sort of the deep roots of sort of the lens that we're operating under. And for me personally, I think, when you take a step back and you look at the context, and that context is Piikani and the larger, Blackfoot people, our communities have been in relationship to this landscape for thousands and thousands of years. And through that time, our language, our relationships, our culture has evolved so intimately with all of those other animate beings on the landscape, whether that's, terrestrial plants or, water, wildlife, etc. All of those different systems and beings, we view them as animate. We view them as having, a life force in them of themselves. And through time, we've evolved these complex relationships with them, and that those relationships require us to give back and take care of both those individual beings and those systems in a way that many people define as reciprocity, right? Mm-hmm. And so the sort of care for this territory, the care for this landscape, has been ongoing for thousands of years. And when you look at the landscape today, I think many in Western conservation take this for granted. The very sort of biodiverse systems that we cherish and love and are working to protect across the West and elsewhere are really the direct result and product of those thousands and thousands of years worth of stewardship and care by Indigenous communities. It's no accident that these natural systems are biodiverse and in many places flourishing or still existing. That's the result of, generations and generations of conscious decision making and conscious manipulation of the landscape. So I just think that's something that we oftentimes take for granted in conservation and don't recognize more clearly. Mm-hmm. And so from my standpoint in our program, that we wanted to integrate that understanding in our work and understand that, in this context, we know who has care for the landscape at the heart of decision making and the culture, and how do we create systems that enable our communities to continue to care for the land and benefit from the land and give back to it. And I think, that in some ways also speaks to the complexity of what conservation work looks like in partnership with Indigenous communities and in these types of places, is that it sort of requires you to think beyond the sort of traditional silos of land management and think about cultural values, expression, language revitalization, community health, education, etc., economic systems. It really is more of a holistic approach, and that's really required. And so I like to oftentimes tell people, the land is only as healthy as our relationship to it, knowing full well that our human beliefs, systems, and behavior are really intimate in that connection.
Yeah, as I was preparing for this, the word that kept coming to mind was holistic, because it seems like there's, just through the TNC lens, with the funding that has been sent into these communities, it's not just about, buffalo. It's not just about, water. It's very much more holistic, even down to work with language, with native languages. And it's, I don't know, it's really inspiring, but also almost like mind-bogglingly complex, thinking about all the different moving parts. Helen, back to you real quick. You've obviously grew up in the community. You've been working in the working hard in the community for coming up on 25 years now. When TNC entered the picture, or you heard that they were thinking about devoting some resources, what's been your kind of relationship and seeing TNC become an important partner in this organization? I mean, like, as kind of watching it all unfold, what have been your thoughts?
The relationship, I think. I tell this story because we're so used to working in the federal government system and applying for grants, and you read the RFP and you're like, okay, how do we build a project that, we're just chasing the resources to do the work that we want to do and try to make it fit. When we started working with TNC, the first thing they asked us was, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
I was like, what?
What was that question again?
Yeah. Well, what do you want me to want? So there was this whole shift, because I don't know, a lot of people don't know tribal colleges, and we're so young, right? We don't have the alumni base. Most of our funding is grant funding. And so like these opportunities for private funding and partnerships was really new. And, it was just exciting. It was exciting to go out and visit. We all went up to British Columbia, up north to the White Bear Rainforest?
Yeah, Great Bear Rainforest on the coast, central coast of British Columbia.
The Halsek people, and got to see how they developed their management system up there between their natural resource departments, and just spent some time, learning from them, and how they also included the youth in that process. And anyway, during that trip, it really opened my eyes to, the possibilities of, so when they asked us again after that trip, well, what do you want? Oh man, the sky was the limit. Mm-hmm. I think, the partnership and the relationship with, our TNC team, and having that trust is the biggest, core value of the relationship. I think, being able to bounce ideas off of each other and be included in planning and, and then growing those new partnerships. And TNC, they can reach beyond the scope of what we have access to. And so, this relationship has just opened up other opportunities for us to continue to really thrive in the work that we see needed as a community. And they've really supported and trusted in us that, our elders who come to sit in the advisory board meetings and have input in the planning, they trust that, okay, this is what we're going to do together. And they support that. And I think, then going to leadership, like the council or, the different department directors and, gathering us all to really, solidify, those plans or that policy. TNC has just been amazing at supporting the work and helping us to really solidify, those dreams and the vision that we share.
Sure. Yeah, you hear that, on all these TNC focused episodes I'm doing. It's a version of that story of just coming in, kind of asking the community very humbly, what do you need? How can we help? And then building this trust over a very long period of time. But I mean, I don't see any other way to do this kind of work other than that, as everything else speeds up and the internet speeds up and everything's just going at this breakneck pace. It's just so nice for me to hear that there's still all this important work happening because of face-to-face trust built over many, many, many years.
I think, just to add one more thing, I think it was, it was a different approach to work with the tribal college. I remember when we first start working with Dylan, we were like, yeah, TNC's coming out. We're doing stations out at Yellowbird Woman. Okay, Dylan, you can do this station. And he's like, what? No, you don't. You're doing a station. You just share what you know. And so as the partnership grew, I think we were, doing this dance of, okay, how does education fit into the scheme of things? And I really feel like, we brought that connection to the work of, this is how you engage the youth. Because this is what we kept hearing from the elders is you need to include the youth. They have to be at the table. However you do that, make sure, that there's always a place or an activity for the youth to come. And even if you don't feel like they're paying attention, include them, expose them to, the activities, to the meetings. Do your best to always keep them in the process. And I think we help create that opportunity for our partnership.
Yeah, super inspiring. And just really cool that this, there was no real blueprint to follow. You guys just kind of figured it out. You worked together. You kind of knew where you wanted it to go, and you were willing to try things out. I think there's so many lessons in that, no matter what you're doing, whether work or hobby or whatever. I mean, that's just a really inspiring yet kind of scary approach to take. I think, it's not easy. So we got this kind of base level of trust that's been built over many years. And there's all these amazing partnerships and projects that are going on. But the one that kind of stuck out when I was doing my research was the Chief Mountain Initiative. And I feel like we could spend 4 hours just talking about that specific initiative and all the different things that come from it. But Dylan, would you mind giving an overview of that project and maybe the history of it, and then just some of the high level goals of the project?
Sure, Ed. Yeah. So the Chief Mountain Initiative, I'm definitely not the best person to speak to it. It's been a multi-generational thing. Ninastaku, or our word for Chief Mountain, it's just such a prominent, important, storied landmark and place. It's been this sort of foundational bedrock place and source of inspiration, source of home for our people for thousands of years, and is recognized as truly significant in that way. So, for generations, we've had this profound respect and appreciation for that part of the landscape. It's been so generous in giving us a lot of what we have as Nitsitapi or Blackfeet people. And so when you fast forward more, contemporarily, I think there's been a really strong grassroots community interest in seeing us continue to care for and improve our care for that part of the landscape. And through my work, it didn't take me long to understand that there's a whole plethora of different both individuals, institutions, departments of tribal government, etc., doing really incredible work across a whole bunch of different sectors. And almost all of those efforts in touchdown in some way or shape or form at Ninastaku. And so, it's sort of, I think, the collective, this diverse group of community members and Blackfeet organizations and leaders, trying to bring that group together and be in dialogue with each other and work together across a lot of these different, intertwined interests and intertwined goals, and see the power of the collective is part of sort of what Helen and I and others were really motivated to cultivate. And you have these long-standing community-led initiatives like the Ini Initiative, the interest in bringing our relative buffalo back to the landscape. You have long-standing community-based initiatives in bringing, more capacity and workforce to the field, whether it's in stewardship or range management or ecology. You have this long-standing interest in, as Helen has already articulated, in reconnecting our youth to our culture and our teachings and the landscape. And so the Chief Mountain work, the Ninastaku Initiative, is really about all of those things in a particular location. And that location's center is the mountain, Ninastaku. And so it's just been this beautiful mosaic of work that's come together and gained a ton of momentum around envisioning a different future for that landscape, a future that is truly Blackfoot-led, that incorporates, our values, our teachings, and our respect for place, that incorporates our sort of need to be able to be on that in that place, practicing our ways uninterrupted. An opportunity to expand in other locations, the opportunity for non-Blackfoot people to be connected to that place and learn from Blackfoot people, a need to remove some of the barriers to wildlife migration, an interest in bringing Ini or buffalo back to the land in a way that they can move freely and be themselves on the landscape, and knowing that there's no better place for them to be than Ninastaku or around Ninastaku. And that's in some ways just the tip of the iceberg. It's like I said, this really, really cool collective body of work that brings in a lot of different efforts, and shows that when we work together across the Confederacy towards our common goals, we can go a lot further when we're working in step with each other.
I love that. Quick follow-up question that just popped in my head on that. So you're talking about this landscape and you're talking about timelines that are millennia, and then you're the kind of framework for thinking about a lot of this is extremely holistic, 360 degrees in every single direction. And yet I would imagine within the organization of TNC, there's a need for metrics of success, which I would think that those two mindsets could be very different, but could also complement each other very well. So I'm just curious, how do you think about measuring success or measuring progress, especially when you're just thinking about it and the reality is it's such a huge an amazingly long time frame and an amazingly holistic approach. I'm just curious to how do you think about measurements of success, if that question makes any sense?
Yeah, I think, the history of TNC's work, from a long time, for a long time has been, one of the measures of success that gets, communicated the most often is just sort of dollars and acres, right? Acres protected and dollars spent. And in some ways, that's such a unfortunate, simplification of the outcomes and how meaningful the work is across the world, but especially here as well. And so those measures are not the most meaningful measures. And I'd pivot. There's a lot of different measures of success that I think we can consider in our collective work here. And I'd love to also get Helen's input on this question. But I think one of the measures of success is, the depth of those relationships, right? Not only the relationships of the partnership and our relationships with each other, how we're working together, how we're listening to each other, how we're overcoming, the challenges of colonization, how, the depth of our relationships with the land and with our relatives on the landscape. For me personally, I didn't grow up having any opportunity to really be around Eni or buffalo. They were something I'd heard about and knew about, obviously in the culture, but I didn't have an opportunity to just observe, myself standing there, listening and feeling and watching their behavior. And so I think that's one of a profound part of what success looks like is an opportunity for our people to be in relationship, not only with Eni, but actually be in relationship with, our medicinal plants, our all of the sky beings, our natural systems around Chief, just standing in the presence of Nina Staku at the base and seeing it and feeling it. That's not an experience that our whole community often has the opportunity to exercise, for a whole bunch of reasons. And so that, I think, is one of the biggest drivers of what success looks like in my view is the quality and depth of those relationships being restored and reconnected. I think that's fundamental. And I don't think that's, I'd caution someone to think that goes one way, right? It's also the relationship that those relatives have with us and our presence as well, and that reciprocity, or that way of both receiving and giving back on both sides. So I think we mutually and collectively benefit from that. I think another major metric of success is, changing our economic systems and making sure that our people have the opportunity to build on or expand their livelihoods. And whether that's through sort of this growing profession of guardianship and guardians positions, people that are employed to be on the landscape, taking care of relatives, being the eyes and ears of their agencies or organizations on the land, making sure that there's pathways for our young people to pursue careers in land management and in these different sectors. A part of our major goal is to make sure that our community has the ability to sustain itself economically as well. So I think that's a critical part of what success looks like.
Yeah, that's great. And I will add in, at least from my research, that TNC, some of the funding has gone to help get some of these guardian positions up and running, which I think is super interesting. I didn't know the backstory on that, so thanks for sharing all that. Yeah, Helen, any other ideas from you about kind of measuring success when you're on a timeline of thousands of years?
What comes to mind is Gitawas and the territory, right? And how from our creation stories, the love that we hold for this land and for this landscape that we live in, that we're all part of. And as newcomers come in, and what those relationships have been and how we were, a lot of times people present in the past, like when you hear stories of the Blackfeet, they'll say, oh, they were this, they were that. And what I see with our partnership with TNC, so the Saskatchewan River up in Alberta being the northern boundary, and remind you, these boundaries they're like not straight,
sure,
black and white. They're they're buffer zones with relationships with our neighbors. So Saskatchewan River up in the north is known to us as the Elk River. The Yellowstone River, also known to us as the Elk River. And so this place that we've always been part of, we were created to be part of this place and to learn from all of our relatives. Today, I think, we've had, of course, all the treaties, the agreements, the land lost, and a lot of work is being done on land back and things like that. Great work being done in and around tribal communities, and I think just working with our Native Science Field Center and getting students back, families back out on the landscape, and reconnecting to stories and language, and how we are the original scientists of our place, of our people. We understand biodiversity and the importance of it, just through our relationships with the land. And I started to think back as we were talking, way back to the seeded strip, and then the badger to medicine, and people like Eloise Cabell partnering for the first land trust, and all this vision, and relationships that were built with TNC that go way back. Terry Tatsy and his brother Keith, and the work that they've done in the past. Like I said, Eloise Cabell and her relationship with TNC, and just building upon their vision, and how do we move forward. And I think through the Field Center, as we were getting out on the land, on the reservation, we started to realize that access to public lands throughout Gitawas and to private lands was going to require the people work. And so, for us as humans, we all agree biodiversity is good for the land, but somehow we can't agree on that diversity is good amongst ourselves. And so I think that's been one of the measures of success for the work that we've done, is being able to again help our students and our families understand that, we can go beyond the reservation boundaries and reconnect to Gadawas and throughout the territory. We have stories of places and sites that are very significant to our way of life, but that's also going to require, building good relationships with people, and that's not always easy. And so I think, again, being able to help our community see themselves as Piikani today. These are the things that when we say nibeta peace and a good life, that's what we're referring to. That's what we're trying to live, is to again have that ability and opportunity to engage in Gadawas and engage with Gadawats. And I think, when Dylan talks about, being able to see our career pathways and how that leads to, prosperity, it's a different world today. Our world is so much smaller with the internet and access to information that we somehow start to lose sight of the visiting that needs to take place. And I think, being able to reach beyond the reservation boundaries and really tell our stories and share our knowledge, throughout the territories with our neighbors, with our friends, and with our enemies. That's success. Just to, again, allow ourselves to have a voice and to create these projects that are, again, pushing against that barrier of, you're only allowed to do this, or, being told you're restricted to this. And it really helps our students and our partners to say, okay, how do we do this better together?
Sure.
How do we have these hard conversations? And if we all agree that diversity on the land is important, then how are we going to work together to ensure that and find understanding in the knowledges that we hold, whether it's Western or Siksikaitsitapi, bringing those knowledge systems together and really appreciating, the equity in those partnerships and providing access, especially access. I think, you'll hear so many stories about people, including myself, who say, I couldn't, like my great grandma was like, don't go to the park. There, don't touch anything. If you do go there, don't pick the berries, don't get yourself in trouble. And now to be able to, tell our children, you guys will know Ini forever. Like, you'll always have him. You'll never have to worry about a world without him. That's success.
I loved all that. And I'd never thought about the idea that everybody agrees that biodiversity is important, but us humans have a hard time getting our head around the concept that human diversity is important as well. That's a lot of wisdom in there. Both of y'all need to write books. You need to write this stuff down, for posterity. I've figured out a way when I'm talking to you humble people that do all this important work who will not toot your own horn and brag about all the great stuff you're doing. I've figured out a way around it. And that is I'd like to know for both of you, we'll start with Dylan. Dylan, what have you learned from Helen in this long journey you've been on this landscape that means so much to you? You know, it's all about relationships. It's all about learning from each other, bouncing ideas off, maybe disagreeing at times, but kind of trying to figure out how do we move forward? I'm curious, Dylan, what you've learned from Helen, and then after that, Helen, what you've learned from Dylan.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have years for me to expand on.
You can put it in the book too.
Things I've learned, but this is almost an impossible task to summarize. But I think some of the things that jump out right quickly is just an incredible appreciation for laughter and humor as good medicine. My aunties love to tease me, and I tease them back, and it brings a lot of joy to the world. And just a lot of good shared times and laughter. And just a deep appreciation for Helen's commitment and just sort of steadfast nature to think deeply, work diligently, and be patient. And that consistency over time is so admirable, despite challenges, lots of challenges in our world, and lots of complex human dynamics and relationships, and that adversity is difficult for all of us. But I just really appreciate her profound sense of sort of grounding in thinking deeply and being able to see long term. And I guess, like I said, I could go on and on and on, but just how generous you are and have been with your knowledge and sharing it. And I learn something every time, and I know everyone who has the privilege of hearing her learns something. So just profound appreciation for all of that knowledge shared.
That's great. Helen?
Thank you, Dylan. Yeah, I think what I've learned from Dylan is courage. Like he said, it gets tough, and you start to doubt, because it is challenging. But I think, just watching Dylan as he has grown, and, it's his courage. I mean, we'll throw these wild ideas out and he'll be like, yeah, let's do it. And so it makes you feel like, okay, we're a little naive and thinking that, oh, we weren't supposed to do that. And next thing, we've initiated it, or we've, voiced it. And, yeah, it's just that courage and trust. I mean, just being able to trust in the next generation of leadership. I've learned that, as long as we plant the seeds, that we can trust that the next generation is going to continue to grow and, grow that work. And I think that even comes from my mentors. Like, I think, just, again, I'm just like, you get the, what would you call it? The orders. This is what we want you to do.
Yeah.
And you do your best to figure out how you're going to get that job done, and to be able to hand the baton over and and trust that Dylan's leadership is guiding this work even beyond us. Is, it's inspiring, and I'm very appreciative and thankful that our future is bright.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing that. So I think we need that kind of stuff more now than ever, because I think everybody, just in general, there's just this, thanks to the internet, just this, I don't know if you call it anger or fear or whatever, but knowing that people like y'all are working together to solve these extremely hard problems and have mutual respect on so many different levels. I think that's what it's all about. So thank you for sharing that. Final question for you. I'm always looking to continue the learning after these conversations. I learned so much by getting to ask y'all questions, but then I want to keep it going. And I found the best way to do that is books. And I love to recommend the books to the people that listen. So I'm curious if y'all have any book recommendations. Dylan, we can start with you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about conservation. I mean, it can just be books that have been important in your development as a human. I'm just always looking for good titles. Do any come to mind?
Yeah. So the first one that comes to mind, I read back when I was in Missoula, going to school, and shout out to Josh Slotnick. He shared this book with the class, and it's called The One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka, and it's a fascinating read. I found it deeply profound, and just at times humorous, even though it's not intended to be. It's such a good book about agriculture and philosophy and life and science, and in some ways, sort of the humility in all of those things. So, yeah, appreciated that book. It was mind changing for sure.
That's a great one. I don't think anybody's ever recommended that one, and I'm nearly 300 episodes in. So I'll be excited to check that one out. Helen, any from you?
Yeah, I was thinking about the question, and I think my learning has always been inspired through my mentors. We are oral
Sure.
people. And so, being in ceremony, we commit a lot of time to just listening and learning things that you don't find in books.
Yeah. I think I love that.
I spend a lot of time, either visiting the elders or, there's a lot of interviews that you can find online now with Leroy Little Bear. I know when I first started with in systemic reform, Greg Kehete's work, Igniting the Sparkle, was a good book. But I've come to really depend on Beverly Bastine, Blackfoot Ways of Knowing, I think it's called.
Okay.
And Robin Kammerer. I had the opportunity, with the Native Science Field Center, we used to have fellows gatherings.
Yeah.
And so we would bring in keynotes from different communities who were doing good work. And I remember we had Terry Tatsy, Robin Kammerer, and Greg Kehete all in one weekend. It was so amazing.
It's a good group.
I know, right? Yeah, Leroy, Blackfoot physics, like I always say, blow your mind better. I mean, every time I listen to a lecture, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's why. But I can tie it back to my teachings with the elders or the language. I think Robin Kammerer, I just read her most recent, it's just a short read, the Savisbury.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I haven't read
Oh
that
my
yet.
gosh. Yeah. Uh, you know, some of the messages in there, and I love the whole biomimicry. That's a new, the next step. But she explains it well. I mean, I think the concept is old. It's very old. And when we started doing beaver mimicry here on campus, I was like, oh man, this is so us. And the students too, they were just eating it up. Now they're all trained in beaver mimicry and can go out and put in their own BDAs. So stuff like that, work like that, being able to, again, just see the progress. And I think, again, listening, reading is one thing, but listening and just being engaged with people who hold the knowledge is really important too.
Well, I feel like that's what I've been trying to soak in all this knowledge. And I just really appreciate y'all being so generous with your time and with your wisdom. And I'm glad we can get this recorded and out into the world to share with other folks. Final thing, Helen, we can stay with you. Any kind of parting words of wisdom, anything? I mean, we could continue talking for like 10 more hours. I'm looking at my list. I think I got through 3 bullet points. So much great stuff. Anything I missed? Any way you'd like to wrap it up?
Yeah, Ninastaku. I think, people are watching us around the world. This is one of the highlights of conservation work. And I just, I always tell people, we're doing some work in research in coexistence and how do we navigate that as we reintroduce ini. And I just want to say again, they're teaching us, even though we release them up there, we really are just watching them and learning from them. So as they define what their life will be as wild again in that area, in that terrain, that landscape, we're just watching them and learning from them. They're going to show us what they need and how they're going to benefit the land, how the land is going to benefit from them, and how we're going to benefit from this process.
Love it. Dylan?
Well, I'm so glad that Helen mentioned land back. I think there's so much that Indigenous peoples all across the world can share and want to share with the rest of the world. And I think, the future of conservation is Indigenous led. When Indigenous people's voices, their songs, their values, and their presence is restored to the landscape, just good things are going to happen. Good things for the landscape, good things for our community, good things for everyone. And that's the future I want to live in. And I think, I'm excited for it. I think land back is the way, and there's a lot of work to do, but it's work that's going to benefit everyone.
I just wanted to say, I know, the non-native world, when we use the term land back, that can be kind of sound like fear-based. And so I just want to caution all of us that as we communicate effectively, that land back doesn't just mean we're taking the land in any sense. It really is, how do we collaborate to have access to these places again, to really truly engage with the land and be present together in the land.
That's a great clarification. I appreciate that. Really, it's just so inspiring getting to talk to you all. And I'm a huge fan of everything you're doing. Hopefully I'll get up there to your region of the country at some point, because I'd love to meet you in person and see some of the amazing work you're doing. But in the meantime, keep it up. I'll leave you alone now so you can get back to your important work. But I really appreciate the time. I appreciate the inspiration, and I look forward to hanging out in person one of these days. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. You're welcome anytime.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I know your time is valuable, so it means the world that you spend it listening. If you want to support the podcast and help it to continue to spread and grow, there are a few ways you can help. Number one, pass it along to a friend or share it on social media. Word of mouth recommendations are the most powerful way for ideas to spread, so I'd love it if you could share the podcast with a few pals who might enjoy it. Number two, you can go to Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Good reviews encourage the Apple overlords to suggest the podcast to others. So there's a link in the notes if you'd be so kind as to give it 5 stars. Number three, you can support the podcast financially via Patreon, and there are exclusive benefits for those who do, including a monthly behind-the-scenes newsletter, Mountain and Prairie stickers, live and recorded video chats with podcast guests, and much more. Number four, I've also got 2 emails that I send out. The first is my weekly email called Good News from the American West, which I send out every Wednesday. It's only positive news, something we can all use a little more of these days. And my other email is my bi-monthly book recommendations email. One email every other month with 5, 6, 7, or 8 books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The thousands of people on both of these lists will vouch for me. No spam or other funny business. And number 5, finally, check out my online store for Mountain and Prairie stickers, shirts, and coffee mugs. I've got some really cool designs from Western artists with more on the way, so head to mountainandprairie.com/shop to check it all out. I'd love to connect with you. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, so look me up on either of those platforms by my name or through the links on my website. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for your support.